Alton Towers Resort, located in Staffordshire, England, is home to one of the most iconic roller coasters anywhere in the world. Whether it's referred to by its original name or its new one, Nemesis is a roller coaster that is loved across the globe by theme park enthusiasts due to its cutting-edge layout and ability to dominate the modern-day roller coaster lineup 30 years after its opening in 1994. Its regeneration was a controversial yet successful one, and in this video we'll take a deep dive into Nemesis, the ride that changed it all for Alton Towers. Alton Towers Resort has been a unique park from its opening in 1980. A local height restriction in the village of Alton has forced the park to be particularly creative when designing and constructing its attractions. However, this became an issue in 1990 when the park installed the Thunder Looper, a Schwarzkopf shuttle loop coaster, in the back area of the park, Thunder Valley. Due to its 40-metre track height, the coaster was a temporary placeholder for something bigger that would arrive at the park a few years later, and with this began the Secret Weapon programme. Alton Towers planned their next major roller coaster with the codename Secret Weapon in 1991, as it was planned to be themed to a secret military facility. However, this ride encountered the same problem as the Thunder Looper, breaching height restrictions of the local area. Although plans were already in place to dig a massive pit into the ground of Thunder Valley, the project was shelved. 12 months later, the project was resurrected as Secret Weapon 2, and now famous rides designer John Wardley was brought into the park after the success of the Runaway Mine Train and the Haunted House. American rides manufacturer Aerodynamics produced a prototype pipeline coaster in the early 90s, and the park were interested in bringing one to the park as a world's first. However, after riding the prototype, Wardley basically called the ride shit, as it was dubbed slow and boring. Never criticised that man's judgment. Unfortunately, the plans for the new attraction had hit a wall once again. It wouldn't take long for Swiss manufacturer Bolliger & Mabillard to unveil their new coaster, however. Six Flags Great America opened Batman the Ride in May 1992, the prototype of their new inverted roller coaster, which suspended the riders and their legs below the track, rather than sitting above it. John Wardley was fascinated by the coaster and, after a quick visit to the park, decided that Alton Towers needed a B&M invert, and thus work began on Secret Weapon 3. The ride was designed by John Wardley and Werner Stengel in 1992, and construction began the year after. The layout for the ride was designed not only to thrill riders on board, but also to be a visual spectacle. It wasn't just a roller coaster in a pit, but became one with its environment, weaving in and out of foliage and boulders, making it a totally unique roller coaster experience. The name Nemesis was eventually decided, twisting the military facility theme from Secret Weapon 1 slightly in order to incorporate a large alien creature living under the valley. As construction continued, hype began to build for Alton Towers' new roller coaster, and fans of the park could purchase CDs and cassette tapes explaining the legend of Nemesis. As well as this, Towers introduced the sale of the Nemesis comic book, which introduced the Phalanx organisation into the Nemesis story, which was then perpetuated in 2024 with the ride's refurbishment. But more on that later. Nemesis opened to the public on March 19, 1994, marking an iconic moment in Alton Towers history. Marketed as the most intense ride experience in the world, the £10 million roller coaster put Alton Towers on the global theme park map, as visitors from all around had to come to the park to experience it. Not only did it begin to increase the park's yearly experience, but it also gave Towers the reputation it holds to this day. The Secret Weapon programme promised guests that new additions would be world-class, record-smashing roller coasters, and this was proven in years to follow, when the park installed the likes of Oblivion, Galactica and the Smiler. In 2003, Two Swords attempted to replicate the success of Nemesis at Towers' sister park Thorpe Park by installing another B&M inverted coaster, this time named Nemesis Inferno. While the ride itself was impressive and arguably just as thrilling, the story of the ride was much weaker than the original and didn't actually tie in with the story of its counterparts at Alton Towers. In my eyes, this was a bit of a money grab attempt by the Two Swords group. They saw the success of the original one and thought that creating another one would replicate that, but as we see an awful lot in the modern age, that is rarely ever the case. The history of Nemesis remained pretty quiet from then on until 2012, when Towers opened a new indoor attraction next to the coaster named Nemesis Subterra. The attraction wasn't anything spectacular, but it allowed guests to become more immersed in the story of Nemesis, as it plunged guests into the Phalanx facility to see the Nemesis egg that was mentioned in the original storyline from 1994. This was all well and good until Towers decided to close it 3 years later with what seemed like every other secondary ride in the park in 2015. What happened there, Towers? No flat rides? None? Not even Ripsaw? Well, Towers brought Subterra back in 2023 with a general refurb in order to bring the Phalanx story back to life, and seem to be doing the exact same thing with Ripsaw and its former site, so at least they're learning from their mistakes. Nemesis Subterra didn't just reopen for no reason, however. In the second half of the 2022 season, it was announced that Nemesis would be closing at the end of the year for a complete retrack and refurbishment.
By order of the Phalanx, as you may or may not be aware, Nemesis is closing.
At the time of closing, the ride was 28 years old, and due to its intensity, the structure of the ride just needed replacing, as certain environmental aspects of the ride experience were weakening with time. The ride officially closed on the 6th of November 2022, and a year later, Towers began to hint at a new theme for the ride. As suggested by the reopening of Subterra, the new Nemesis would delve more into the Phalanx storyline from the comic book in 1994. In January 2024, it was announced that Nemesis Reborn would be opening to mark the ride's 30th anniversary. This included a complete retrack of the original ride, a new colour scheme, a new soundtrack, new theming pieces, improved infrastructure, and a focus on detailed storytelling. As well as that, Nemesis finally got its own gift shop. The new ride was a hit for Alton Towers, as it was praised for looking after its older attractions. However, the retrack also sparked controversy amongst the fans of the park, claiming that the newer track and trains took away from the experience that the original provided. The roar of the original version was said to be lost, as well as the new trains featuring an uncomfortable rattle, especially towards the back of the train. Regardless, it is difficult to deny that the new Nemesis has given the classic a new lease of life and another guaranteed 20 years minimum at the park. I visited Alton Towers in June of this year, and I must say that I do prefer the ride experience of the original. However, the theming and refreshed area makes this version so much better on the whole. The entire of Forbidden Valley is now alive, where before it looked abandoned. Well, that is if you're ignoring Galactica. God, I would love to be in charge of retheming that thing. It looks so bad right now. What are your thoughts on the new Nemesis? Do you prefer the regenerated coaster? Or do you have a soft spot for the original? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching this time, and hopefully I will see you again soon.